Hello, everyone. We are live. And because occasionally I put the wrong link in various places, I'm going to check to make sure we are actually live on the correct screen, the correct stream, and all that stuff. Yes, it appears that we are. So, hello. If you're here in the chat, please say hello. Please leave comments, leave questions in the chat. I have a whole bunch of questions that were asked in advance. So, I'm going to be going to some of those. But before I do any of that, I just want to thank you. I mean, it's hard for me to even grasp that we have 20,000 followers, and it's just still blowing my mind. Honestly, it's not even real, I think. I would not be able to do this without you guys, obviously. So just huge thank you for your support. And I just want to let you know some of the stuff that I've been working on over the last year, just so you know what your support has led to. So, beyond the stuff that you guys already know about that I've been doing. So, of course, I've updated the free course. I will link to that in the description of this live Q&A in case you haven't signed up for the updated version. I moved it to a brand new website. So, if you've already accessed the free course, you'll have to sign up again. I'm so sorry about that. I know that's a huge pain, but it's super easy and it's quick and it's free and all that stuff. So, you can get access to it. I have my own 12-week structured program now that you can access. I'll put links to that and all the information in the description of the live Q&A as well. Just again, a lot of stuff happening on my end, but really the most important stuff is that I've been connecting behind the scenes to all the physicians who work in, or to some of the physicians, at least not all of them, physicians who work with people with chronic dizziness and sharing my resources. And you will be so happy to hear that there have been several physicians who've been super open to the approach that we're taking here and who are starting to refer their patients to my channel for more ideas and resources and the free course and all that. So the fact that I have credibility now because of you guys, because of you, my incredible subscribers who just again, it just inspire me and help me every day. We're actually making changes, guys. We're making changes in the way PPPD, vestibular migraine, and MDDS and all these other neural circuit dizziness conditions are actually being treated not just on the internet, but like in real life. And that's a dream. That's what I really want to do because I'm one person and no matter how many videos I put out, there are literally thousands of people getting diagnosed with this stuff every day. And if they're given resources like these quickly, then they don't have to go down the route of having chronic symptoms for years and years, like many of you guys have had. So, again, I'm kind of tearing up right now thinking about this, but really could not do this, like literally could not do this without your support. And I just thank you so much on my behalf for giving me so much meaning in what I'm doing, but also on behalf of all the people you have inadvertently, just by being here and asking questions and subscribing to my channel and watching the videos, just by doing those things, you've made a difference to other people. You have actually helped other people with chronic dizziness get access to these resources because now they're more legitimate because you've made them more legitimate. So to all of you, thank you. And especially huge thank you to whoever it was. One of you guys talked to your doctors about my work. Doctors from Johns Hopkins, a very prominent neurotologist who I'm going to be collaborating with on some work. You have been talking to your doctors about this stuff and they're listening to you and they're contacting me. So you guys are just the most amazing people. Again, thank you so much. Words are not adequate. Thank you. Okay, so now I know you're really here to get some of your questions answered. So first, I'm just going to come over to the chat and say hello to some people. So Parker, hello. And I see Death Reaper, cool. I don't know what your real name is, but cool screen name. Steve, hey Mike. Hello, Mike made it. Thank you, Mike, for coming to support me. Manikanta, Kirby, Josiah, good to see you. Amanda, Bridget, Sripriya, and Bridget, I said hello to you already. Joan, hello, Joan. And Jean, thank you guys so much for coming. These are folks I actually know, so it's really cool to see their faces here, not just people I'm meeting for the first time. Hi, Kyrene and Natalie, Romina, Kirby, Wendy. Hello. Oh my gosh, Kirby is in Orlando. Hello from Central Florida as well. Kirby, we are in for some crazy storms this afternoon. So I was like, I really hope that I don't lose electricity in the middle of this Q&A, but so far it's just looking cloudy and kind of rainy. So nothing crazy right now. And Crystal and Ravan and Margarita and hello, Michelle. Yes. Oh, Mandeep. Okay. Death Reaper's name is Mandeep. Awesome. So I see some newcomers here. So Margarita saying, I'm new to the channel, been suffering for 16 years, dismissed by doctors. Boy, are you in the right place. Shri Priya has been here for just 2 weeks. And so she's brand new to the channel as well. Kathy's first time here to the Q&A. Okay, so basically the point of this Q&A is for me to just say hello to you and get to know you and answer some questions. That's really why we're here today. It's just a little thank you to all of you again, as I already went on and on about for the first 4 or 5 minutes of this call. Just thanking you so much for your support, and not just on my behalf, but on behalf of all the people who you've helped by supporting me. Because knowing when you guys make those little comments, I know it just takes you a few seconds, but you make a comment like, Yonit, this helped me so much. Thank you so much. It makes me go, okay, what I'm doing really matters. I should keep doing this. And then when I keep doing it, I'm giving people more information. And then the more information I put out, the more people can get better. And it's just like a really good upward spiral. So, okay. Hello. And Debbie is here. And oh, that's so great. Debbie says her son, Sam, has been helped by my work. That's so awesome. And Hane and let's see, Ed is here. Hello. Oh my gosh, you guys are from all over. Amy and Josiah has a question. I will try to get to that. Okay. Yes. Hey, good. Why don't you share your win? I mean, if you're going to share a win, if anyone's going to understand a little win, it's going to be the people in this chat. So please, please, please be sure to share that in the chat. Okay. So I'm just going to pull one of the questions because we had some questions that were asked in advance. I'm just going to pull one of those. And Shri Priya, who is here in the chat, and actually she says she's brand new to the channel. So this is her first time at a Q&A altogether. So we're going to welcome her by opening up with her question. So she's asking, can symptoms retrace or reemerge during recovery? And she says, I used to get jerks when I was about to fall asleep as my initial symptoms 3 years ago. I'm getting the same from the last few days after I started following the free course 3 weeks back. Okay, so I have a bunch of things to say about this, since especially old symptoms. I'm just going to put this on the screen so you guys can see. Okay, so old symptoms. So many of you are new to the channel. Some of you are not. So for those of you who are new, this is a really important topic because sometimes people are really excited when they find my work. And in fact, a lot of you will find my work and then be like, I'm just safe and everything's fine. And you might even physically feel better for like a week. And then suddenly things aren't so great. You have a reemergence of symptoms and things don't look like they're working. Okay. So first of all, let's just normalize this. It is not fate. So this doesn't happen to everyone, but some of you are going to get worse after you find my work. And by the way, if that just freaked you out, I hear you. When I say things get worse, sometimes I mean, you'll see an old symptom pop up, or you'll notice your baseline is annoyingly high, right? So it's not like, oh my gosh, so much more than you can handle. For a lot of you, the worst is actually already passed, but you might notice a little uptick in symptoms, shall we say. And this is a normal phenomenon, and it doesn't mean that what you're doing isn't working. It doesn't mean that, oh my gosh, there's something physically wrong with you and this is all wrong. What it means is you're starting to pay attention to your symptoms a little bit more. So a few different ways to think about this, and I'll talk specifically, Shri Priya, about symptom reemergence as well. But a couple ways to think about this. The first being that you are really just paying more attention to trying to get better, okay? And symptoms are always going to respond to more attention being paid to them with turning the volume dial up. It's kind of like you're shining a flashlight on the symptoms when you're starting to pay attention to them in this way. So, for those of you, for example, who tried somatic tracking, and you're like, wow, that was interesting. I'm actually noticing that I'm feeling the symptom a little bit more right now. Well, you're paying more attention to them. This is a temporary effect because what we're trying to do essentially is break the link that's connecting the symptom to fear mode. We're trying to disconnect the symptom from the anxiety and fear cycle that keeps chronic dizziness symptoms going. When we first pay attention to the symptom, that symptom is still linked to that cycle. But as we start to pay attention to that symptom again and again and again, and we're practicing not having fear, we're practicing acceptance or presence or maybe grudging acceptance. Like you might not like the symptom, but you're doing something like somatic tracking where you're just allowing the symptom temporarily. We're starting to link that symptom to a new reaction. So over time, when you notice the symptoms, you're not going to have that fear reaction anymore, but it takes a little bit of time to make that connection happen. So you might initially notice that nothing's changing or symptoms have a little bit of an uptick, but over time they will come down and they will come down below where they were when you first started. So just normalizing that. For you, Shri Priya, yes, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. I'm so sorry. I try very hard. As someone named Yonit, I really try hard with people's names, but sometimes I get them wrong. So symptoms do sometimes reemerge. And the way that I think about this, especially, and I have a whole video on this, by the way. So since you're new to my channel, I'm going to put this link in the chat. I think this is one of my most useful videos. It's why do my symptoms change? Here it is. Why your chronic dizziness symptoms change. Okay, so here that's in the chat now. Or it's not in the chat. Now it's in the chat. So you can follow that link from the chat. Anyone who's watching this either on replay or live, you can follow that in the chat. It's called Why Your Chronic Dizziness Symptoms Change and Shift During Recovery and What You Can Do About It. But I think for your purposes, Shripriya, the way to think about this is your symptoms the symptoms that you tend to be most afraid of or most focused on are the ones that tend to be the strongest. And often what will happen is when we start to lose our fear of one particular symptom, a different one will pop up. And your brain will just kind of try different ones out on you. Now, I want you to remember, I'm about to say something that might sound kind of controversial. So just keeping in mind here that I'm not saying that dizziness, the way that you're experiencing dizziness right now, is normal. What I'm saying is that some dizziness sensations are normal. Like it is normal if I turn my head quickly to have a moment of dizziness, or it's normal if I'm walking out in the Florida heat, and it's really humid, to feel kind of floaty, or like I'm walking on a trampoline for a couple minutes afterwards. It's normal stuff. So what can happen is you start to lose your fear of a particular symptom, but your brain is still in danger mode. Your brain is still operating in that, oh my gosh, something is really wrong here mode. And it's looking for the source of the problem. So when a different sensation pops up, like an ordinary one or one that maybe showed up in the past, and it just spontaneously shows up because your brain, again, can just kind of spontaneously have symptoms like this sometimes, your brain can end up focusing on it a lot. And that can make that symptom reemerge, so to speak. And the one that you're describing in particular here, you were talking about jerks. So I see that a lot with anxiety. So another thing that can happen, and I have a video on this as well, is why does my anxiety get worse during recovery? I have a video on this because it's such a common issue. So here is another one in the chat. So here we go. Ask Dr. Yo, why is my anxiety getting worse during chronic dizziness recovery and what to do? So this is a really, really good one to watch. I give you a whole bunch of ideas about why something like a jerk or an anxiety type response might be emerging during the recovery process. So yeah, very exactly right. So Margarita is saying symptoms are like a flip chart. When I settle with one, another one pops up. Feels like playing whack-a-mole. I know we have a totally global audience here, so I'm not sure if whack-a-mole is a global thing, but it's that game that you play at like a fair where like the little animals pop up and you have to try to bat them on the head with a hammer or like a big puffy thing. So symptoms are kind of like that. Oh, you get one and now another one pops up, and oh, I got the other one, another one pops up. So the trick here is to not focus on specific symptoms, which was the topic of that recent short I put out, I think yesterday, which brought up a really interesting question from some folks. But yeah, so again, just welcoming our newcomers. You guys are coming so fast. I don't think I'm going to be able to catch all your names, but I see Carol and Richa and let's see, Ayan. That's so great. And Joe. Okay. And Karuna. Awesome. Okay. So, all right. So coming back to my questions, I'm going to see if I can grab one from the Q&A now. Okay. Hang on a second. Just scrolling back up. Okay. I'm so glad you asked this question, Amanda. So, yeah. So she's asking about superior canal dehiscence syndrome. So this is something may not apply to most of you here, but I'm calling this out for a second because it's important and I haven't made a video on it yet. So you know, guys, how I'm always saying, make sure you don't have physical tissue damage that explains your symptoms. Superior canal dehiscence refers to essentially a tissue problem. It refers to there being a leak in the inner ear somewhere, like a little hole in the inner ear somewhere. And because the inner ear is a pressure response system, obviously if you have a leak, it has trouble regulating pressure and understanding what pressure changes mean. So long story short, third window syndrome or superior canal dehiscence, that is something that I consider to be a tissue damage problem that needs medical or surgical treatment. However, I really advise people who have this to go through the neural circuit dizziness checklist, because sometimes I kind of wonder, just based on people's responses. So they'll have surgery and then they have exactly the same symptoms afterwards. I kind of wonder if maybe the inner ear issue that is being blamed for the symptoms actually pre-existed or was there for a while. And now the dizziness that's being caused by that has been, quote unquote, picked up by the nervous system that's now in a hypervigilant state. So the nervous system is now sensitive to those symptoms and it's turning the volume up on them. So my point is, this is something definitely that is not a black and white answer, Amanda. The reason my course is free is you have nothing to lose by following my advice. Okay. So if you go through the course and you end up being nicer to yourself, addressing your stress and becoming just kind of generally more self-compassionate, it's going to benefit you no matter what. The question is it going to fully resolve your symptoms? And that is not as clear when someone has a physical abnormality that explains some of the symptoms. So I think of it kind of like a spectrum. For the vast majority of you here in the chat, your symptoms are far over in the neural circuit spectrum. So in other words, there's no physical abnormality. You're fine. And as soon as your brain decides that you're not in danger anymore, the symptoms will go down. For those of you who have some kind of biological abnormality, like some kind of explanation that might be causing some or all of the symptoms, there's always a contribution from your nervous system state. The question is how much, and we don't know until you've tried. So that's my answer to that. I will have a video on that in the future, but thank you for asking that question. Okay, so let's pull another question here from the chat. And Joe says, so Joe is one of the people I think who may have been referred by Dr. Gold at Hopkins. As I said at the beginning of this Q&A, Johns Hopkins, some of those physicians have been sending patients to my channel, which is, like I said, I can't even, and that's because of all of you guys, because you're telling your physicians about this stuff. So yeah, my dizziness is there from when I wake up until I go to bed. Have not seen any improvement. So Joe, you didn't specify in your question what you've been doing, so what you've been working on. And so the very first thing that I would suggest is the free course, because that is like all of my advice is really condensed into that, and it really pulls it all together for you. I've recently updated it, and little Easter egg for those of you here who've joined us for the Q&A, I have a new video coming out on stress, like how to deal with unavoidable stress, and that's going into the new course as well. So in other words, the course contains a bunch of my YouTube videos, but sequenced out logically with lots of instruction and lots of text as well. So it's easy to translate if English is not your native language. And that can help you pull together a recovery program for you and for yourself. And I get feedback from people all the time that it's been incredibly helpful during their recoveries. Okay, so do I just see, I think I see Mindy here and Crystal here. Mandy, hello. It's so good to see you. Mandy's here in the chat. Hello. Mandy, who's doing amazingly well. And I'm not going to share any of her information publicly, but let's just say Mandy has made a dramatic recovery from where she was. Okay. Oh, okay. Great. So so it's not Joe, it's Jane. So it looks like you might be signed in under Joe's account, Jane, but hello, Jane. So if you've done the free course, then you have options. I have a much more in-depth 12-week self-paced course. So that's one option. Also, now, let me not just also. So for some people, that's the way they want to go. This is something they really feel like, this is something I can do myself with a little bit of support, because with the course, you also get access to my coaching groups. So you're going to be able to meet with me weekly with a group of other participants. We do lots of coaching, and we have a private community where you can get support. If that doesn't seem like your jam, that's totally fine. I know some people just really want individual support. And there is a whole army of psychotherapists and coaches out there who specialize in helping people with mind-body conditions. And my suggestion, Jane, if you feel like you're in the camp where, I really feel like I need really individual support and I don't want to be part of a group, then you would want to go to ppdassociation.org and look through their directory for a provider near you. These are people who are trained not specifically in vestibular disorders, but who have a lot of experience working with people who have medically unexplained chronic symptoms of many kinds. And many of the people in that directory are people I know, or who at least are colleagues of mine. So if there's something that they're not sure about, they know I'm the dizziness person. Excuse me. They know I'm the dizziness person, so they can always get in touch with me if they need to. Okay, so I hope that helps. All right, gosh, I'm getting so many questions in the chat. And let's see, we have a question about visual vertigo. Kirakos asked about visual vertigo. So tons of visual vertigo. Also, just want to say, first of all, number one symptom beyond dizziness. So when people have dizziness, it is the number one symptom. So I've got so many resources on this. This is my best recommendation. Look at this video. So I'm going to put a video in the chat for you. For anyone looking for information on visual vertigo, you're going to want to look at this video. So this one is, I think, the one that probably sums up my current approach the best. And if you're new to this channel, it may not make a whole lot of sense to you. So you're going to want to watch the basics video that I reference in this video to really understand my method. And then from there, you can also consider doing the free course. So I'm going to move on back to the original post that I made where people asked questions, since I know some of them. Let's see, here we are. We definitely have some great questions here. I was so excited to see this one from Liz. So Liz says, and I see, by the way, India is representing here today. Hello. Gosh, it's late for you guys. I think you're 10 and a half hours ahead of me. I don't know. I think you don't do daylight savings time. So one of you will have to tell me what time it is in India right now. But oh my gosh, it's late. I know it's late at night. So Liz is asking the question about outcome independence. Okay. And sorry about the noise if you're hearing that. Of course, the leaf blowers decided to show up right in the middle of my Q&A. So that is really fun. Oh, it's 11 p.m. Okay, so it's not absurdly late in the middle of the night. That makes me feel better. Okay, so Liz asked about outcome independence. How do people get to this leap of faith? As I recover and have ups and downs, the ups feel so good, it's freaking hard not to want the symptoms to be gone when the downs inevitably come back. Intellectually, I get the concept, and I even see it in practice on the low days when I find I care less and suddenly realize they've disappeared. but I can't quite seem to make this jump while still experiencing miserable down and high sensation days. All right, Liz, amazing question. And Liz, let me also, just for those of you who are newer here, talk about outcome independence first so that people know what I'm talking about. So, outcome independence is something I talk about a lot here on the channel. And essentially, I say it in like 15 different ways. But what I mean by outcome independence and why Liz is pointing out it's an important thing is that essentially, the more you care, the more you're like fighting and like battling the symptoms and are trying to get them to go away, the more you tend to increase the fear and the anxiety loops that are keeping chronic dizziness symptoms going. And I want to be clear here. I know that not all of you had anxiety prior to chronic dizziness, and chronic dizziness isn't the same as anxiety. Those are not the same thing. However, what does happen, and what I can tell you, is that anxiety and fear really do feed into chronic symptoms. And additionally, beyond fear and anxiety, even just the internal stress that you develop when you have chronic symptoms can also lead to your brain being a little more sensitive than normal to either normal sensations or be a little less likely to interpret sensory information correctly. So what am I saying with all of this? The more you try to push yourself to fight something, the more you battle the symptoms, the more they tend to stick around. And this is a huge paradox, I'm aware, because here you guys all are in a Q&A about how to get rid of chronic dizziness. So how in the world are you supposed to get rid of chronic dizziness while also trying to trick yourself into not wanting to get rid of chronic dizziness? Okay. So this is a really, really good question. So a few thoughts on this. And the first is, again, I just want to normalize the fact that this is a totally normal human reaction and that it makes complete sense that you would be maybe interested in the outcome of feeling physically better. So the very first thing, Liz, that I would want you to do, and anyone else who's going through something like this, the very first thing that I would want you to do if you're having a tough symptom day and you're like, gosh, I just wish they would go away, is to show yourself some compassion and say, yeah, this is hard and it makes sense that I would want the symptoms to go away. Because what I find is that people with chronic dizziness will often immediately jump to trying to blame themselves or trying to say, I'm supposed to be doing this right. And Yonit says I'm supposed to be outcome independent, or my doctor said I'm supposed to be outcome independent, or my CBT therapist said I'm supposed to like reframe these fear thoughts, and I'm having trouble doing that because I'm physically miserable and uncomfortable right now. So first, normalize that this is happening to you. And after you've done that, Liz, I think the best way to work with this is to work with what's here right now. And on a high symptom day, your job isn't to force yourself to like be okay with the symptoms being there. It's to tend to your nervous system in a way that it doesn't increase your vigilance. So it's not necessarily that it's like black and white. So, or I guess on or off. So it's not really that I'm asking you to either deeply care about the symptoms or not care about the symptoms. What I'm kind of asking you to do is turn your attention to something a little bit different entirely. So rather than trying to battle the symptoms away, noticing that that's kind of your first inclination, right? When you're feeling really miserable, your first inclination is going to be to try to make those symptoms go away. Noticing that's happening, normalizing that, giving yourself compassion, and then saying to yourself, my job is to attend to myself in a way that calms my nervous system right now. It doesn't mean that I have to like the symptoms or be okay with them being here. It just means that I need to calm my nervous system. And calming the nervous system, again, for those of you who are new here, for some of you, it's going to be as simple as breathing more slowly, reminding yourself that you're safe, and that's awesome. But for some of you, it can be a little more difficult than that. And in fact, breathing and telling yourself you're safe when you really don't feel safe is actually really misattuning to yourself. It's actually not making your nervous system feel safe. It's another one of those weird paradoxes with healing. I hope this makes sense. So please let me know in the chat if none of this makes sense. So what I want you to do, Liz, and anyone else who's having trouble with this idea that you're trying to not fight the symptoms, but you also want them to go away, is to start first, give yourself compassion. Second, start connecting to your experience in the present moment. And in this video on stress that I referenced earlier that I think will be out this weekend, it's probably one of my best, honestly, guys. So like you really should watch that one. It might solve all the questions that you have in the chat. It's a really useful video. But the second thing that you want to do here is notice and name what's happening in the present and separate that from the story you're telling yourself. So Liz, what's happening for you in these moments is you're telling yourself a story. If I'm not outcome independent, I'm not going to get better, or the symptoms are really high. Man, this means blah, 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 blah. There's some element of the symptoms just being awful. And then there's also an additional element of what does this mean about my recovery? What does this mean about me? What does this mean about my relationships, my ability to work, and all that stuff? We are not here to decide whether those stories are correct or not. When I say stories, I don't mean that they're not true, but they're not here right now. That is what your brain is trying to tell you might happen next. I don't want you to think about what's happening next. I want you to draw your attention back to what's here, right now. When you do that, you're going to start to notice and name your experiences. So you're going to say, I'm having high symptoms. This is hard. I notice fear. I notice anxiety. I notice frustration. Whatever it is, you're just going to start to name your experiences. And you're going to stay with those experiences, trying to allow space for all of those experiences to happen. I know that may seem like a lot of not doing anything for those of you who are watching this and are, especially those of you who are hearing my work for the first time, you're like, what is she talking about? But what we're doing here is regulating. This is regulating your nervous system. You're taking yourself out of future. You're in the present. You're practicing attuning to your inner experiences. Think about it this way. So Liz, and for anyone else, if you came home after a really hard day and you said to your partner, I had a really hard day. It was awful. Everything went wrong. And your partner was like, no, it didn't. You're fine. Like, how would that work out? Not well, right? Or what if your partner just completely ignored you and tried not to listen to you? Wouldn't go well either, right? What would make you feel safe? What would make you feel safe is your partner reflecting back to you what he or she heard, right? If you said, man, I had such a hard day, and your partner said, wow, you had such a hard day. How would that make you feel? It would make you feel safer. So that's what you're trying to do for yourself. You're creating kind of a dialogue between you and you. That's how you make yourself feel safer. So Liz, what I'm describing here is a skill. This isn't something that people can just spontaneously do on day one. But the more you practice this, the more you're going to find that on those days when you have high symptoms, your instinct isn't to jump into the future and start thinking about the worst scenario. Your instinct isn't going to be to try to force yourself to feel outcome independent or feel better. Your instinct is going to be to attune and take care of what's happening right here, right now. And when you're doing that, you're not thinking about symptoms. You're thinking about, I'm caring for myself. I'm attuning to myself. And that, again, leads to nervous system safety. And that in and of itself ends up being outcome independent because you're not doing this specifically with your eyes on symptoms. So I hope that made sense, Liz. Again, that was a really, 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 really great question. All right. So I see a lot of activity here in the chat. Okay, so Kyrene's asking if my therapist has helped with education, not fearing, but symptoms still around, would you suggest looking for a different therapist, and what type of therapy is for emotional work? That's a really great question. So I want to say, first of all, that of course, I don't know anything about you and your relationship with your therapist. So it might be a great idea to have a conversation with your therapist and say, hey, what are your thoughts about the fact that I still have symptoms? What do you think might be going on here? So just kind of throwing that out there, that might be a good way to think about this. So for a large subset of you, so lots of you guys are here viewing my channel. You may be new to chronic dizziness. For a lot of you, this is mostly about thoughts and reducing fear. And that's awesome. So for most of you, what Kyrene is describing is plenty. That's how people get better. And you'll hear this in a lot of the success stories. There's just a mindset change and a change in the way you're thinking about things, and you're able to regulate and your nervous system feels safer, and then the symptoms go away. For a subset of you that's significant, it's not most of you, but it's a large number of you, maybe those of you here in the chat, maybe those of you listening to this as a replay, it changing your reactions to the symptoms is not it. It's part of it. So reactions to symptoms, super important. Changing the way we think about the symptoms, super important. Reducing fear. Kyrene, it sounds like you and your therapist have done an absolutely awesome job. Everything that I think is really, really important for pretty much anyone who needs to recover. But for some people, that's not enough. And the reason is that neural circuit dizziness is not just driven by the symptoms. So when you see my videos, sometimes people get the impression that what I'm saying is it's all about your reactions to the symptoms, because obviously I talk about symptoms a lot because you're having symptoms. So it makes sense. But what I'm really trying to get at in a lot of my videos and in a lot of my work in general, and actually in my coaching group, this is pretty much all we do really, is more focused on what else can be feeding into this neural circuit. And the other things that feed into the neural circuit are things like stress. And let me just say a word about stress. Again, I have the video coming out about stress. I apparently am very excited about it because I keep bringing it up. But when I'm talking about stress, I'm not talking about stressful life experiences. Okay. So those of you here in the chat, some of you probably have like an identifiable source of stress. Like, okay, my symptoms came on after all these crazy things happened to me, and it makes total sense that my nervous system was like, no, I'm done. But for a lot of you, it's not so clear. And what I mean by stress is not outside events, but internal reactions to the outside events. And sometimes those internal reactions are involuntary and unconscious, meaning you may be having a strong stress response to outside events that are relatively tame, that aren't necessarily a big deal. But when your nervous system is constantly getting the message that you're in danger, your nervous system is going to respond to everything with more vigilance, and it can lead to chronic dizziness symptoms keeping going even after you've lost your fear of them and you're not really worried about them anymore. And in that case, we want to do some more work around what else is going on in your life and what else was going on in your life at the time the symptoms started. Not because I care about the past in the sense that, oh, we have to have some like magical emotional release to fix the past, but more along the lines of needing to figure out what else in your current life might be triggering your brain to think you're in danger. It's not just the symptoms. So to do emotional work, emotional work is such a tricky term. Um, I personally think that experiential therapies are much better at this. And there's one that's been developed specifically for mind-body conditions called EAET. EAET, that's Emotional Awareness and Expression Therapy. I'll put that in the chat. Emotional Awareness and Expression Therapy. So that, I know that sounds like like emotional awareness and expression, but this is one that's been developed specifically for physical symptoms. I use it myself in my work with people. Another one that, as many of you know, I'm trained in is internal family systems. That's another type of experiential therapy. I'm also trained in, and Pippa, who is an audiologist who works with me and is absolutely phenomenal. She's trained, she and I are both trained in AEDP. She's done actually more advanced training than I have. So experiential dynamic psychotherapy. So I put that in the chat as well. AEDP stands for accelerated experiential dynamic psychotherapy. So those are the three that I have the most familiarity with and the most comfort with, because I'm personally trained in them, and Pippa's trained in AEDP, and we're both trained in EAET. But some of you may not be able to find therapists in your vicinity who are trained in those modalities. So I've had other clients have luck with EMDR and somatic experiencing as well, and ISTDP. I just think I just pressed enter while it was kind of weird. Oh, no, I didn't. Okay, ISTDP. So that's another type of therapy that can work really well for chronic symptoms. The trick is these are general therapeutic modalities, and some therapists have a lot of expertise and knowledge about physical symptoms, and some don't. So your therapist may look at you like you have two heads. If you're like, yeah, I have dizziness and I think my emotions are contributing to it. And if he or she does, then move on to the next therapist. Your therapist should say, oh, yeah, that makes total sense when you say, hey, I think my symptoms may be related to stress and emotions. Can you help me with that? Your therapist should be like, "Oh yeah, that makes total sense. Yep, let's do it. Let's work on this." So that you really you want to try on therapists like shoes. You want to consult with a few and see how much openness they have to an approach that looks at your nervous system and how it's responding to things and having physical symptoms as the result. I have also, by the way, seen therapists go through my free course on like deliberately because they had a client or a patient come through with that particular issue. So you kind of want a therapist who shows interest and is willing to learn a little bit more about the vocabulary of dizziness in order to help you. So those are some thoughts in general on how to find a therapist. Okay, awesome. All right. Well, guys, this is so fun. Okay, so I'm gonna just take another look out up in the chat. Yes, yes. Never speak negatively about yourself, even as a joke. Your body doesn't know the difference. Words are energy and cast spells, hence spelling. Change the way you speak about yourself. The way that I like to say that is the brain hears everything the mouth says. And by the way, that is not my phrase. I think I got that from Dr. Rachel Zoffness, who's an amazing pain psychologist. I'm pretty sure she's the one who said that. Yeah. Okay. Oh, Tina's here and Sophia's here. Yes. And let's see, Maureen is here. Um, okay. Wow. This is a really great question. Okay. And then I'll pull another one from the Q&A thread. So, what should I do or how can I deal with when my family makes fun of my instability, saying that I've gone old? They're trying to make things lighter, but it's not easy for me with them joking. Yeah, I hear that. I hear that. So, uh, and okay, so kind of two sides to this. The first, so remember how a few minutes ago I was talking about internal stress? So what you're giving an example of is something that's outside stress that can also be inside stress. So let me explain fully here. People making fun of you, it's going to be stressful no matter what, right? That's just awful. And I don't want them to do that. And we'll talk about that in a second. But the way that your nervous system responds to them is something you have some control over. So you understanding that they're probably doing this as a defense, they're scared and they're nervous and they're coping with humor can be helpful. It can help shield you a little bit from the stress that's being caused by their words. So that's one thing. So I just gave you kind of a thought skill or a cognitive skill, but I would also argue, Karuna, that working with the emotions that are coming up inside you about this, that's also going to help lead you to a better way of dealing with the inside stress and potentially having a conversation with them. So this kind of leads me to emotions. So this is why emotions are important. So the reason emotions are important is because they're really important data. And Karuna, if my family were making fun of me, I would feel angry. I would feel angry and I would feel hurt and I would feel sad and I might feel frustrated with them, especially if this is a long-standing pattern. And what happens often with people with chronic dizziness, and I'm not trying to generalize or pathologize any of you. I'm just saying that this is something that happens a lot and I specifically work on with people because it's so common for people with neural circuit dizziness issues that they tend to be um, less accepting of certain feelings. So, in other words, it's easy for them to feel sad, for example, but it's hard for them to feel anger. They may reject feelings of anger in themselves, or they may reject feelings of sadness or vulnerability or whatever. And when we're not fully aware of all of our emotions and when we don't know how to work with them skillfully, We're missing data, which is not helpful. You need data in order to make good decisions, but we're also inadvertently telling the brain that those emotions are dangerous. So, avoidance is a proxy for a danger signal. Things that you avoid, you are telling your brain those things should be avoided. Those are bad things. Those are scary and those are dangerous things. In the context of chronic dizziness, when you avoid particular emotions, and Karuna, I'm not saying you are, but most people do, especially when they're around loved ones, because we're worried about being abandoned or them not liking us anymore or not loving us anymore if we express the full spectrum of our emotions. What we're actually getting here is a double danger signal, because you have the danger signal related to the outside stress of them making fun of you, and then you also are having to suppress your own emotions about it, and you're losing data, and you're telling your brain that those emotions are dangerous, so that when those emotions come back up again, your brain increases the volume of the dizziness, because it's also viewing the emotions as even more of a danger signal than it was before. And this can kind of build over time. So, my first suggestion, Karuna, not because they're in the right, they are in the wrong, but we don't have as much control over them as we have over you. So, this is not me blaming you for their terrible behavior. This is me saying, I want you to have some power here before you have a conversation with them. So, the first thing to do, again, reframe a little bit. They're probably doing this as a defense. What am I feeling? What am I feeling? Can I allow myself without them there? You can do this on your own. Can you allow yourself to feel the full spectrum of the emotions that are coming up from the situation and from them making fun of you? And see if you can express them. Write them down, journal. Like, how do I feel when they make fun of me? Maybe even write them an angry letter. This isn't for you to actually express this to them. This is for you to just kind of get those feelings moving, get them out. Once you've done that, you've exposed yourself to the feeling. So you've told your brain that the feeling is safe. And you've also gotten some of the data that the emotion is trying to tell you. Once you have that data, it is so much easier to make good decisions. So, Karuna, again, I'm going with the example of anger, and I'm not saying that this is what you feel. Okay, so please don't think I'm putting this on you. But this is just because I would feel this way if I were experiencing what you were experiencing. If you write an angry letter and you let a lot of that anger out and you explore all the other emotions that are coming up, you're going to get insight into what your needs are, and then you can make some good decisions about what you need to do in order to meet your own needs. And again, this isn't putting it on you. It's not your fault, but in this case, because the only person you can control is yourself, it is your responsibility. And it may be your responsibility to set boundaries with them and tell them to knock it off and stop it, because it's not acceptable for them to do this if it's making you feel bad. But I think first having a connection to yourself and your own experiences is going to give you strength and courage to have that conversation. Okay, so moving on. Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. Looking at some questions here. So, yeah. So, Manikanta's asking about visual snow and dissociation. How do you deal with those weird visual symptoms? So, yes, I have videos on each of those things. So, visual snow. Here, let me pop this video into the chat. So, there's a video on visual snow for you. And I have a video on dissociation for you. So that's in the chat too. It's called Why Do You Feel Spacey When You Have Chronic Dizziness? So in those videos, I give some specific suggestions for those symptoms. I just want the theme of this Q&A to be basically what I talked about in that 60-second or 51-second or however long it was video that I put up yesterday about how you can't fight specific symptoms. And by the way, I just want you guys to know, I I really hope that you understand the reason that I put so much into my YouTube channel and so much into education is that I I understand how scary it is to have symptoms like these, and I want to be able to give you knowledge, because sometimes knowledge is so empowering and so reassuring. So I will explain things till I'm blue in the face so you understand everything about why you have specific symptoms. That being said, once you know, or once you get a sense, or once you have a little bit of belief, okay, this is something I can get better from, just one moment, then the move is to try not to focus on specific symptoms. And I'm aware that some of these symptoms are so debilitating that you need specific advice relating to those specific symptoms. And that's why I have all these videos on specific symptoms on YouTube. And by the way, in the updated free course, I put them all into one section. So there's one section on how to deal with specific symptoms. Okay. So I have all sorts of videos on there, in there. All of those are available for free in the free course and on YouTube. That all being said, the best way to deal with a specific symptom like visual snow or dissociation is to do your best to address the underlying cause and try not to get obsessed with fixing the symptom. And I know that's, again, super hard. And I am aware it's easy for me to say this when I am not having those symptoms right now and you are. So I want you to know I'm saying this with so much sympathy and so much empathy and so much understanding and compassion. I know you can't fully like say, okay, cool, I'll just ignore that when it can be really scary and debilitating. I'm totally aware of that. But your long-term strategy, you want to work on fear, anxiety, and stress. Those are the big things that are feeding into the chronic dizziness cycle. And the symptoms, again, are only a piece of that story. So the more you can say, okay, I'm noticing this symptom a lot right now. What else might be driving danger mode for me? The better the recovery is going to go, the more easily it will go. Yeah. Okay. Oh, this is a great question. So Richa's asking, I was out for vacation when my symptoms were very less there. The time I entered my home, the symptoms are back. Why did this happen? This is a hallmark of neural circuit dizziness. This happens so often, and I address this in this video. It's called Why Traveling is Okay When You Have Neural Circuit Dizziness, but I'll put that in the chat so you can take a look at that if you haven't seen it. But basically, your brain associates, so a couple things, two things. One, your brain tends to associate symptoms with your home, especially if you've been home and dizzy a lot. Your brain associates dizziness with home. Think about it. Okay, wow, this is the stupid metaphor that just came, or example that came up in my mind. But how many of you, when you smell chocolate chip cookies or bread, your mouth waters? Most of you, right? Why? You're not eating. Why would your mouth water? Your mouth is watering because you have a memory of those things tasting good and your body is preparing you for those things. That's just a very simple example of a brain association. So your brain remembers your home as a dangerous place where you have symptoms. So it's obliging you. It's creating symptoms when you get home. That's one thing. The second thing, there are stressors associated with home. Sometimes, again, it's just a simple association. I'm used to being dizzy here, so I'm dizzy here. Sometimes there are people who are driving my symptoms. There are stressors that are driving my symptoms that are associated directly with home. I'm not on vacation. Now I need to cope with the fact that I need to go back to work, or I need to cope with my feelings about the fact that I'm not working because I'm not feeling good, or a kid who may be a little tricky to parent, or maybe an elderly parent, or maybe a partner who you love, but you have some conflicts with. All of these things can turn danger mode back on. So when you see this happen, it's such an opportunity because it means it's a neural circuit problem. It means there's nothing physically wrong with you. Brain tumors do not care if you're home or on vacation. They do not care. Okay. So this again is just seals the deal for you. This is neural circuit dizziness, but it also gives you a clue about what might be bothering you, what might be driving the symptoms in the first place. So that's the investigation you need to do in order to recover. Okay, so I saw another question here in the chat. Let's see. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited about this question. Okay, Sean is asking about exercise. You knew I wouldn't be able to resist this question. What are your thoughts on the effects of fitness weight training when it comes to PPPD? I've had it since mid-2022. And when I started training, dieting in Feb, I've never felt better. Yes, love hearing that, Sean. Good for you. And it is not easy to do this, let me say. So hats off to you. I know this must have taken a lot out of you to get started on this. It's hard enough, but then add on not feeling well on top of it. It's a lot. So here is a video, Sean, that I made specifically about this, how and why to exercise for chronic dizziness. In the 12-week course referenced earlier in this Q&A, Steady Start, which is again a guided 12 like step by step, week by week program for those of you who need something like that. Basically, week 12 is all about exercise. And I made like I really had to stop myself because I made like 3 different videos about exercise, or maybe even 4 at this point, and I was like, "Okay, I need to stop because this course is not about exercise," but I think it's just such an underutilized tool. Sean, it increases the size of your stress bucket. So for those of you new to my channel, I'm going to explain the stress bucket. And for those of you who have been on my channel many times, I'm so sorry you're going to have to listen to the stress bucket metaphor so many times. So, the stress bucket, all the stress in your life goes into a bucket. Okay. Stress like I lost a pet, or I lost my job, or I have chronic dizziness, but also stress like the weather changed and I woke up a little late today. So, like minor stressors, big stressors, small stressors. When the bucket gets full, that's when we end up with chronic symptoms. That's when your body's like, okay, capacity has been exceeded. We are in danger mode now. Turn on all the alarms. Okay. That's when the alarms get turned on. So, our goal in chronic dizziness recovery in general, what you hear about on my channel a lot is taking stuff out of the bucket. So, all those scary thoughts you have about symptoms, all of the mean ways in which you treat yourself that are definitely affecting the stress levels in your bucket, um, bad relationships that are affecting your stress bucket, maybe, just everyday stressors that are affecting you disproportionately right now because your stress bucket's full. But Sean, things like exercise, good nutrition, good lifestyle habits, getting enough sleep, those make your bucket bigger. And what that means is the stress in the bucket affects you less. So, from my perspective, everyone who's recovering from neural circuit dizziness should be doing anything that he or she can to make the bucket bigger. But I'm aware that for some of you, that is a huge ask. Some of you have insomnia. Some of you are so miserable right now that the thought of walking to the door is hard enough, let alone lifting a weight. And I get it. So there are always things you can do to take stress out of your bucket if exercise and lifestyle stuff is just off the table. And a word for those of you with obsessive compulsive tendencies or anxiety, it's easy to get obsessed and get that OCD obsession or the anxiety obsession attached to some of these lifestyle things and think, oh my gosh, Yonit said I have to make my bucket bigger and I'm not sleeping and this means I'm never going to get better. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying it's helpful overall in the recovery process, especially when there's stress you cannot control. It makes you better able to contain it. So totally good for you, Sean. That's awesome. And thank you for that question. And Daria, I have to answer this question. This near and dear to my heart. And I don't know if you've seen this video from Andrea. So you're asking about pregnancy. I would like to start a family, but I'm terrified of how the pregnancy will go with all the symptoms. So here's Andrea's story. She's a success story here. So take a listen to that, Daria. And I want you to know that we had a slew of babies in the Steady Coach community recently. I don't want to share any personal details about anyone, but we had pregnancies and babies, and I I hope I can get one of them to come on the channel to talk about the experience. So, pregnancy puts some strain on your stress bucket. Okay, kind of like what we were talking about in the last question. It puts some strain on your stress bucket, but you can handle it. You can handle it. It means you're going to need to take better care of yourself than maybe the average person might be able to get away with. But there's so much that you can do to make your stress bucket bigger. And if you listen to Andrea's story, this has been my typical experience with people who are going through starting a family when they're dealing with dizziness. My general experience has been that pregnancy doesn't make things worse. What tends to happen is that people are under so much stress at the end when the baby comes that if they haven't developed good skills, that's when things can get really tricky. Okay. I'm not saying this is hard and fast because I've definitely heard from people for whom pregnancy was really tricky and difficult. But in general, what I've seen is that the pregnancy is fine. People just need to develop skills during and before the pregnancy in how to deal with the stress post pregnancy. Okay. So You have my blessing. Honestly, I've seen others go through it and tell me how happy they were that they didn't wait, that they developed the skills that they needed to develop, but also didn't want to wait to start a family. So again, you can do this. I know you can do this, and congratulations in advance because I know you're going to be an amazing mother. Okay, so all right. So, question from Mindy here. Hello, Sam. Hi, Sam. So, Sam is here in the chat, who you guys all know. Sam is famous because Sam's recovery story is right here. I'm going to put that in the chat too. Sam didn't know I was going to do this. I had no idea she was coming. She didn't know I was going to be putting her video in the chat. So, this is Sam's recovery story. So, for those of you who were asking about visual issues, you've got to listen to Sam's story because most of Sam's issues were visual. So, you got to listen to that. Okay. Do I see Isa here? Oh, Isa. Yes. Okay, Isa. So I think it's a different Isa. It's not the Isa I know. So she says, wanted to ask if you can recover in an unsupportive environment. Yeah. So I did answer that question earlier, like somewhat similarly. So if you rewind, gosh, I'm sorry, I don't know exactly how long ago that was. It was maybe 20 minutes ago. If you rewind, you can listen to my answer to that. I answered a question about unsupportive family members. So Mindy is saying my posture has become so bad from all this too because I tend to cradle myself to keep myself safe. Is there anything you suggest for this? It looks so bad and I noticed it too. Yeah, so okay. So on one hand, I'm thinking breathing is the ultimate tool here. So but then I also just want to say, so Mindy, I don't know you personally. I've met you via the comments, right? But for people who are super anxious, I get really careful about prescribing physical practices because sometimes they make people focus on the problem even more, like get more obsessed with the problem. So, look, posture is something we want to think about in the long term, right? Is it the primary problem here? No, it's not the primary problem. Now, again, we want to address it, but there will be plenty of time in your life, Mindy, when you're feeling better to do back strengthening exercises and deep breathing exercises. It's not something I want you to really spend a lot of time focusing on and worrying about because God knows you have enough to worry about right now, okay? So, that all being said, in my opinion, the very best thing that you can do for your posture is learn to breathe. And this is going to sound so stupidly simple. You're going to be like, I can't believe that Yonit answered my question this way. But the best way to correct your posture is to just notice how you're breathing right now and then ask yourself, how how would I have to position myself so that I could take as big a breath as possible? And what naturally starts to happen is people open up their shoulders, they open up their chests, their bellies start to come out, right? When you take a big breath, your posture naturally starts to kind of correct itself. And I'm not saying that that's the only thing you should do. Again, coming back to strength training, Sean, who again brought that up for me, of course, we want to train, we want to do more pull exercises than push exercises. And there's all sorts of things that we can do about this. But really, breathing is kind of the most important and most fundamental part of this. So that, if anything, that's what I would be focusing on. Okay. So let's see. Oh, some great questions. Okay. So Nacho Cheese asks about, does recovery depend on age or cause of dizziness, or PPPD? So I have a video about this, how long recovery takes. So I'm just going to pop that in the chat for you. How long recovery takes. So you can take a look at that. I know I have so many videos right now that even those of you who've been on my channel for a while may just not have seen all of them. So Melanie, hello. Oh, it's so good to see familiar faces here. So great. Yeah. Yeah. So much stress. Oh, Edward, thank you. Oh, thank you. Edward saying should have been 200K instead of 20K. Love your help and support. That is so sweet of you. Honestly, I was saying earlier, I can't even believe it's 20K. When I started the channel, I was like, no one's ever going to watch these. In fact, I never intended for anyone to watch them. They were for my clients. They just needed me to repeat a lot. So I was like, here, I'll make you a video so you can just watch me say this again. And then people started watching them. And now the fact that it's as big as it is, from my perspective, it is amazing. And Edward, honestly, the most incredible part for me is just like I get messages like yours, and I see comments like the ones I see on my channel. I get people just just dropping a line to let me know like what they're doing in their lives now that they're not feeling so miserable anymore. Like, oh man, it's the best job in the world. So thank you so much. And thank you, all of you, for all of the support. Yeah. So yeah, I think running's fine, Dorothy. So Dorothy's asking about running. Yeah. Yes. Okay. So let me pull one more question here from the post. Okay. All right. So let's see. Um, okay. So question about medication. So this is one that I get asked a lot. So this is from Erilizeth. I don't know. That's probably completely the wrong pronunciation. But I'm going to put that up on the screen. So I actually have a video about this. I feel like it's actually amazing. You guys always come up with more new questions. It's just incredible that I have a library of a bazillion videos at this point, and you still ask questions that I don't have videos for. So just kudos to all of you. But this is a question that I have videos about. So um, here we go. So it's called Ask Dr. Yo, do I need to take medication to get better from chronic dizziness or PPPD? So I want to be very clear here. I am not a medical doctor. I do not prescribe or advise about medications in my professional life. This is, again, out of my area of expertise. So the only thing that I can really advise you on is what I've seen from my clients anecdotally. And medication is absolutely an option for some people. I'm really pretty neutral about medications. I feel like whatever helps you helps you. Um, think again, if we think about what the root issue is here, if the issue is a brain that's hypervigilant and you kind of being stuck in this cycle of fear and anxiety and stress and all that, sometimes medications can help people break that cycle enough to do the other work. My objection to medications is only that they're sometimes or often the only solution offered. I don't think medications are adequate. So if someone only gives you medication and says, this will fix you, I just think that's a bad thing. I think we're putting a band aid on the problem. But dizziness is hard. It is so hard to deal with chronic dizziness. So it's like to ask you, hey, so I want you to work on your stress and like talk to your family members in a constructive way and like, be nice to yourself and you're feeling like physically debilitated. That's a high ask. Some people pull it off without medications. Actually, a lot of people on my channel do. Full disclosure, you guys have to remember I'm biased, okay? Why are you finding my channel? You're probably finding my channel because you've tried medications and they didn't work. So more than half of the people here on the channel, I would say based on my comments and my anecdotal experience with clients, more than half of you don't use medications. It's not because I'm saying medications don't work. It's because I have a bias in the sense that people finding my channel have tried them and they didn't work, or they're looking for an alternative so that they don't have to take medications. But medications can really help break the cycle for some people. So it is okay if it's of course endorsed by your doctor and you feel okay with it. It is okay to use that as part of your recovery. Just make sure that's not the only thing you're doing. That's my main advice on that. Mike question. Yes. Oh, just one quick thing before Mike bring on Mike. So that stuff says the final piece for me was Zoloft. I'm 100% normal now. Brilliant. Exactly. Is that you, Brock? Brock, is that you? I think that's you in the picture. Yep. So exactly. I think that may be Brock. Yes. So I'm going to come back to Tech Meets Dan. I will come back to you in just a second. Let me just answer Mike's question real quick since we're talking so much about exercise and I'm like all about exercise. Yay, Brock. Sorry, guys. So I don't know how many of you know this. I actually got to meet Brock in person. He was in my area and I got to have, Brock, I was about to say dessert, but it was more than dessert because my kids had like 2 giant crepes apiece. It was like a giant, like it was a very long, like prolonged, like dessert/dinner/dessert again type of process, but it was awesome. So that's so great. And thank you, Brock, for posting your experience here. I think that's really helpful for people to know. Okay, Mike, I want to get back to physical exercise in a gym badly, and yet my muscle stiffness pains seem more intense. Do you think it's possible to reframe these types of aches this way? Absolutely, Mike. Okay, so This gets really tricky, right? Mike, as you know, and many people here know, one of the symptoms that I had was chronic back pain. And it was a bit of a struggle because pain usually means stop doing that. And it's really hard to tell yourself, yeah, I'm getting all this pain and I may be injured, but I'm just going to do it anyway. Like it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel right. Okay. So what I like to advise people with this is just like you would approach any intelligent strength training program and use progressive overload, meaning you're going to ramp up slowly. That's how you want to address this. Now, in the PT world, you might call this graded exposure, Mike, but I think of it just as intelligent training. You start low and you work your way up. It's not about how strong you are. It's about also letting all the tissues and all the nerves catch up to what you're actually doing. So starting lower and being consistent is much more important than starting intensely and going really hard and working out 4 days a week for 3 hours a time. Please don't do that either. That doesn't sound healthy for most people. But starting even with just 10 minutes of training at a lower intensity than you can handle and being very consistent with it and slowly working up over time is going to be the key to working through this. And that's going to, again, give your brain and tissues a chance to catch up so that you know that these are false signals, if that makes sense. Okay. So in other words, um, if you jump straight into it, your brain is much more likely to push back and say there's actually something horribly physically wrong with you. But if you go in with the mindset, I'm going low and slow so I can give my tissues time to catch up, pain and stiffness and soreness that you feel during this process is going to be a lot less scary. And you're not going to go into it with the mindset like, oh, I just can't do my normal workouts because I'm just too debilitated by my symptoms. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yes. So stress can totally cause visual vertigo. Yes, to answer your question. And there are no medications or natural alternatives other that I am aware of that actually work other than the stuff that I talk about here, which is annoying. I know, annoying because you have to do a lot of internal work and like stress stuff and all that stuff. Okay, so no, so not Brock, excuse me. The person who commented above Brock, Tech Meets Dan was wondering what we do in the group coaching sessions. We do awesomeness in the group coaching sessions. They're honestly probably my favorite thing ever because I get so attached to people in our coaching groups and I've gotten to know them so well. So in our group coaching session, so I want to put this in context. So the group coaching sessions are just part of a larger ecosystem. So we have a private community with discussion boards where I'm on the discussion boards answering questions and stuff all the time. And I have live Q&As like this one every week. So I already know people who are in on these discussion boards. And then the group coaching meetings are where we take a kind of an in-depth look into how to recover. So the idea is that it's not the only thing we're doing, if that makes sense. So during the meetings, we spend some time sharing wins. We spend usually just 10, 15 minutes on that. We spend time getting to know our newcomers because we usually have at least a few new faces in our meetings. And then in like the last part of or I guess the majority of the coaching call, nowadays what we do is people submit their names in advance. They volunteer to go in depth on coaching with me, or if you're attending one of the ones with Pippa, they go into more depth with Pippa. So Pippa, again, is an audiologist, highly trained, just amazing. And she's just been such a huge asset. People love her. So what we do is people will volunteer to bring a specific issue that they're having, and I will spend anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour coaching that person through that. And this is all done in the context of the group. So I'm not just talking to the person, I'm also kind of teaching to the group and explaining what I'm doing while I'm working with the person. So I'll be focusing on the person, then I'll say, hey, is it all right if I stop and explain what I'm doing to the group? And people will make notes and kind of start to apply some of the techniques that they see me use on their own. So I enjoy them a lot. People seem to get a lot out of them, and we record them too, so people can watch the replays if they can't attend them live. So thank you for that question. I think this is the first time I've ever talked about what we do in the coaching groups on YouTube. How is Parker doing these days? Parker was here in the chat. Parker, do you want to comment? I don't know if she's still here because I know this Q&A has gone on for a while, but Parker was actually here in the chat, so we should definitely hear from you. Parker, if you're here, Kyrene wants to know how you are. And by the way, I really try to do follow-ups. I follow up with most of the folks in the success stories. So some of you may know, well, you saw my follow-up interview with Vivian. I did a follow-up interview with Julie, and actually I'm scheduling for a follow-up interview with Mario. Yes. So Parker, do you want to answer Kyrene and just let us know how you are, how you're doing? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. So awesome. Oh, thank you so much. I'm so glad to hear that. Yes. Okay. So Rita was saying, well, so Merck says you helped me so much. No Zoloft, no medication needed, just knowing yourself better. Honestly, that's the experience of, I would say again, a large number of people that I work with. And Rita says I was already on an SSRI, unsuccessful when tried to find the right cocktail with others, made me feel worse, back to original med. Yeah, that is very much an issue that again brings people to my channel, which thus my bias, right, everyone? Okay. So here's a question for yeah, okay. So let's take Jill's question and then we're going to go to Emerald's question. Yay. Oh, that's so great. I'm doing better, Parker says. Oh, that's so sweet. Oh, I'm so glad. Oh, okay. I'm happy. Parker, I get a lot of comments like that one that you're very much loved from the people who've seen your success story. Okay. So Jill has a question I think also relates to some of the things I talked about earlier. Even though I'm doing the same thing every day, exposure therapy, etc., does the brain start to shift and rewire as I'm not seeing progress? This goes back to that original question. And Jill, I don't know what you are and are not doing. So again, please take whatever I say with a grain of salt. But what I tend to see when I get questions like these is that people are really focusing on exposure and reactions to symptoms, and they're not focusing on why the nervous system is detecting danger. And that again comes back to emotional work, which again is a term that I've learned is like kind of squishy. Like, what does it mean? Right. What I'm really getting at is investigating why your nervous system thinks you're in danger. The symptoms are not the only reason your nervous system thinks you're in danger. It's not. If you have neural circuit dizziness, your nervous system thinks you're in danger, and the symptoms are not always the only problem. So you can exposure work yourself till the cows come home. But if you have not also addressed the other things that might be leading to chronic dizziness symptoms, the other things that might be leading to nervous system hypervigilance, the other things that are telling your nervous system you're not safe, then you're not safe and your nervous system is not going to stop perpetuating the chronic dizziness symptoms. Again, my perspective on this. So when you've done a lot of exposure work and then like a previous commenter asked, what if I've, really lost my fear and like I feel like I've done so much cognitive work and it's just not doing anything. I think Kyrene, was that you? Then there's probably something else going on. There's probably something else. And you may, again, to elaborate on this, Jill, for you and Kyrene for you and for anyone else has similar questions, exposure is a huge part of this. So those of you in the chat who are new to this work, excuse me, just not avoiding things is huge. Starting to do the things you've been avoiding is a huge part of recovery. I'm not trying to downplay that. But you also you want to get a sense of what else is going on that might be affecting you. And Jill, the way I do this typically is sometimes I'm going via the symptoms. I'm noticing how people are reacting to the symptoms, but sometimes people aren't reacting to the symptoms anymore. Then I'm just kind of noticing how they're relating to everything else in their life. I'm noticing how they're relating to themselves. I'm noticing how they're relating to other people, their jobs, their lack of job, whatever. And that's when those emotional patterns start showing up that tell me a little bit more information about what else is going on in that person's life, even if there's no source of external stress, because a lot of this is on the inside. What else is going on inside the person, I should say, that might be leading to danger mode still being active? So that's where I would go if things aren't getting better. Yes. Okay. Yes. So to answer your question, Jane, are the group chat sessions part of this 12-week course? Yes. So I did things kind of the opposite way. So most people put out 12-week programs like these, and then you pay extra for the coaching sessions. What I decided to do was build it into the coaching because I don't feel like anyone should have to do a course without any guidance. And you can. Okay. So those of you who are like, I'm doing this by myself, go for it. Do it by yourself. You don't ever have to talk to me. You don't ever have to talk to another soul. You could just go through the course. Okay. You don't have to be part of the community if you don't want to be. But I feel like having human connection is such a part of what makes people feel safe. Like, how can I build a program and not have you able to talk to me and talk to other people going through it? So yes, the group coaching sessions are part of the course. That's why it's a monthly fee, because it it's a service. It's not just, oh, I'm paying for all this information one time. It's you're joining the coaching group as well. Okay. All right. So one question here. Yes. Oh, Isa. Isa, I've got a video coming for you. Isa, can your nervous system recover if you heal from some of your stressors? Is it possible to heal from all your life stressors? That would be a lifelong process. It's about the stress bucket, my love. It's about the stress bucket. You don't need to empty your bucket of all stress and achieve a state of complete nirvana. Nope, not going to happen. You're going to have stress. Everything's going to be fine. It's a matter of making sure the stress isn't constantly just exploding everywhere. There's a video coming out. I think it will be this weekend. I can't remember what's on my calendar. Um, because I have now had to write things down, because if it's just in my head, it's not happening. So I have a video about stress. It'll come out. It'll be this weekend or next weekend and Sunday. It's about how to manage unavoidable stress. That is the video for you. Okay. Wonderful. And what was the question? Oh, yeah. I wanted to come back to what Emerald Rachel TV is asking. What is daily life like for those that have overcome this? Keeping up with VRT exercises, being more active, journaling, meditations. Is there that fear of the dizziness returning? Oh, I love this question. Okay. No, they are no longer doing VRT. For goodness sake, no. I do not want you to have to do VRT for the rest of your life. I don't know if you've seen the success stories. Um, they live normal lives. Sam, do you want to speak to this? Sam's here in the chat if she's here. Sam is fully recovered. Um, so basically, they live normal lives, but the way they relate to themselves is different. And the way that they relate to physical sensations is different. And I'm not saying that that is a complete requisite to get better, because I've seen some people get better just by, not being afraid of the symptoms anymore. And they're like, oh, it's just my brain. Everything's fine. Just my nervous system. Cool. And then they're like, okay, I just need to like not be so stressed out all the time and not be so mean and so hard on myself. And they just kind of change some of their habits and they move on with their lives. For a lot of the people that I work with, at least, and again, I have a bias here, because you have to remember, guys, I'm looking at things through my perspective as someone who works with people with very difficult symptoms. People who get better from my videos and my free course, I never work with them. Okay. So many of you may be people who will get better just from watching videos and doing the free course and being nicer to yourself. I have a bias because I work as a coach with people who don't get better from those things. So I see people who are dealing with the more difficult cases. Okay. So, coming from that perspective of my bias, what I see is that people change the entire way they relate to themselves. And that's, again, happens to different degrees depending on what was going on in the person's life. But there's this change in how people treat themselves and how they relate to other people, if I had to really boil it down. So they're not like necessarily doing that through journaling and meditation, although I love those as tools to help connect to yourself. All of them tend to have some kind of practice that helps keep them honest with themselves. So it may be journaling or meditation, but it may also be just sitting down at the end of the day and just spending time thinking about your day and just checking in with yourself. It may be working with a coach or a therapist weekly for a while or for an extended period of time, just to kind of explore and, again, keep yourself honest with the work. So I don't really feel like that work ends. The work of relating to yourself in a way that promotes safety and relating to other people in a way that promotes connection and safety. I think that's an ongoing lifelong thing, but they're not doing dizziness specific stuff. And in fact, I just had someone graduate from the community. Shout out to you, Charlotte. Hi. If you're here, I don't know if you're here. So I just had someone graduate from the community who I advised not to do my program. I told her, she asked, she was like, should I do the 12-week program? And I said, no, I don't think you need it unless you feel like you need to grow and have that done in a dizziness specific way. So for her and for many people, I think they can just leave the dizziness world behind and not do any vestibular specific stuff and just take care of themselves. And that's it. That's what their lives look like. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Oh, I'm so glad you guys liked that um that last video on my channel. I was actually so surprised by the response to that. I think so Christian, Andy, Scott, Elizabeth, Ron, I mean, they are just the most incredible people. I just had no idea if people were actually going to watch that channel or that panel or not. I was like, are people going to be interested in hearing something like we're not fully recovered yet? And it turns out, yes, the answer is absolutely. People are totally interested in that. So again, that was really, really, really cool. So I see that question from Waves. Where do I even start? Been many years and lost career, family, and friends, barely hanging on, no support or money. Meds made me worse. How to feel safe when so isolated and disconnected. I'm sorry you're going through this. And the fact that you're here already tells me something helpful, because you are here listening to this Q&A. You had the courage to put your question here in a comment. It tells me there's a spark in you that is still fighting. Okay. So it may not feel like enough, but I promise you it's all that it takes. All it takes is a spark to get started. And there are people here, probably here in the chat, who've been worse than you, who've gotten better. Start with the free course. That is where you should start. It is completely free. You do not need money. The only thing that you might lose is time, because you're going to have to go through it. If you're really dizzy and having visual symptoms, there are lots of videos. If you don't speak English as a native language, you can translate it. It's user-friendly. Sign up for the free course. It is thesteadycoach.com/free-course. I'll put that in the chat. Free course. I made this free course specifically for people like you, because I hear stories like this a lot. Once you do that, you can also follow along with the videos in my channel, and you'll see that there's a lot of help and support in the comments. And if the approach resonates with you, there are people in the comments who will see your comments, and there are people who will connect with you and help support you. Let me put it that way. The other thing you should definitely check out, Waves, is the success stories. I know sometimes the success stories can be a little tricky because you're like, there's just no way, because they seem so normal by the time they do the success story. But I promise you, some of them have been where you are right now. Sam has been where you are right now. Parker was there for sure. Okay. And they're not there anymore. So there is a lot of hope. There's so much hope. And there are more success stories going to come. So I'm going to answer this last question from Denise, and then we are going to close our Q&A today. So, hi, Dr. Yo, I'm so far undiagnosed. The doctor's saying possible labyrinthitis, BPPV, or Meniere's disease. Wow, that covers the whole range of disorders. Am I in the right place with you to help these possible diagnoses? Okay, so Denise, they need to do some tests on you to make sure there's nothing physically wrong. Okay, that's like the most important thing. You very well may be in the right place, but if it's just BPPV and there's just a pesky crystal stuck in your ear, like, it'll be a maneuver or a couple exercises and you'll be done and you'll feel better. Okay. But we really need some answers. We need an expert physician to look at you to make sure that we don't have any of those actual conditions causing the problem. If you get the diagnosis of Meniere's, then you're going to want to watch this video, because I explain how Meniere's often is not Meniere's. The Meniere's diagnosis is often just a diagnosis they give you because they're not sure what else to give you. So sometimes when someone says, I have some of those doctors will just give you that diagnosis because they don't know what else to tell you. And sometimes there's actual evidence of tissue damage in the inner ear. So we need to know if there's damage in the inner ear first. Denise, in the free course that I referenced, again, it is completely free. So you can sign up, even if it doesn't apply to you. You can start doing stress reduction and working on mindset. It's not going to hurt you. It's going to help anyone, right? There's a list of physicians in the part where I talk about getting a correct diagnosis. I have a list of physicians that I have personally had experience with, either via clients or I have personally spoken to them, who I know are open to the idea of neural circuit dizziness and may be able to help. So please, if you live in any of the areas where any of those physicians are, then you may consider working with one of those. Okay. And yes, you can have more than one diagnosis because most of these diagnoses are names. They're just names for symptoms. They're not really diagnoses like, oh, there are 3 things wrong with me. It's usually just there's one thing wrong and it's just a nervous system error. That's what's wrong. So we're going to close our Q&A here, guys. This was fun is probably the wrong word because I know none of the things that you guys are going through is fun, but fulfilling. It was meaningful and fulfilling to me. I saw so many questions. Josiah, I wish I could have answered your question, especially I just didn't get to it because there are just so many people here who had questions. But I just, again, thank you from the bottom of my heart. I'm so appreciative of you guys for sticking with me and helping me grow my channel. If you find my videos helpful, please like the videos and share the channel and watch the videos and comment on them. Let me know you like the information I'm giving you, because I read those comments. I can't respond and read all the comments anymore because we have grown so much, but I really do go through and read a lot of the comments. I see what you're saying. And this is the kind of stuff that lets me know that what I'm doing is helpful, and it motivates me. And it reminds me that I'm helping real people out there, real people like you who are going through something really hard. So again, it means a lot to me that you're trusting me at a time that I know is really, really, really difficult. Maybe the most difficult thing you've ever gone through. I hold that trust very near and dear to my heart, and I will do my best to keep serving you. So again, thank you guys so, so very much. For those of you who are new, please take the free course. It is a legit free course. It's not like, oh, take my free course and it's 2 pages and please pay for my program. It is a legitimate, like long, very detailed free course. Most people who get better just do the free course. You don't need to pay for anything. Okay. So please take the free course if you've not taken it already. All right. Thank you. Thank you guys. So much love to all of you. You are so, so welcome. You're so, so welcome. Thank you guys so, so much for being here and for the kind words. I love all of you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And I will see you for another Q&A soon, right? 30,000? I don't know. 50,000 maybe? I'll see you guys soon. Take care, everyone. Bye.